I think I'll be able to ask a question to everyone before they answer, but if you don't need it, repeat it. I don't want to wear out my welcome here. So, Bevan, San Francisco imposes a 1.5% payroll tax on all businesses whose payrolls exceed $150,000. However, many large companies award this tax, while small and mid-sized companies bear the brunt of the cost. What is your position on San Francisco payroll tax and how it is imposed?
A lot of the candidates here have talked about this. Los Angeles reformed their business tax, and what they basically did was they brought an outside consultant to run a stakeholder process, and they were very methodical and thoughtful and spent actually 3 years developing community consensus in Los Angeles to change their business tax structure so there wasn't an inhibitor to hiring people, and that went to the ballot and was successful. I worked very closely with City Treasurer Jose Cisneros, and I would like to have Jose work with our Controller Ben Rosenfield and involve the Board of Supervisors and the public and go forward and develop bringing somebody on board that can do this. So I definitely think there is need for reform of our business tax system, and especially the payroll tax. Obviously, and I do support the initiatives that started with the mayor and David and Jane Kim around Twitter, and I do believe with biotech, for example, that it's been important to have a payroll tax credit. We now have over 200 clean tech companies that get a 10-year payroll tax credit, so it's clear that this is something that we need to address.
Great, thank you. David, same question to you.
Business tax reform is something that I have been an advocate for ever since I was the Chief Operating Officer of a small business and served on our City Small Business Commission. The fact of the matter is, only 10% of all businesses in San Francisco, and most of these businesses are small businesses, pay the payroll tax. That is fundamentally unfair, as is the fact that when you tax the creation of jobs, that is not a very smart and efficient tax policy. I have been championing business tax reform for now 4 years. And in fact, at the beginning of this year, called for our city to really look at this. As part of our budget process, a couple weeks ago, we actually placed money in the budget to start the process that Bevan was referring to do the research, to bring in the economists and the consultants to tell us what do we need to do to move to a different type of a tax system, one that is fair, one that spreads the burden across more businesses and ensures that we're actually creating economic growth. And I would be sure as mayor to come back to this community to make sure that you give us feedback in that process as well.
Thanks, David. Gentlemen, do you need me to repeat the question? I think we got it. And also, too, I hate saying 10 seconds. I feel like every time I'm saying, shut up. So I hope it doesn't come off that way. So, all right. Dennis?
I'm in agreement with both Bevan and David, and that's why 4 months ago you may have seen that I wrote an op-ed for the San Francisco Examiner saying that on day 1 as mayor I would call for a tax summit to bring together community leaders, business leaders, and city leaders to help design a new replacement for the payroll tax that we could put on the ballot in November 2012. It would build upon work that my office did with the controller back in 2010 when we laid out, and as a starting point, 5 different alternatives to replace the payroll tax in the hope that it would have been put on the ballot in November 2010. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It has to be on the ballot at the same time the Board of Supervisors is up for election. But we know that the payroll tax provides us with about $350 million a year. We need to provide a steady revenue stream, one that doesn't go up and down with the local economy as much as this one does, and at the same time doesn't inhibit job creation for large, medium, and large businesses. And it's something that has to be priority 1 for the next mayor.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. There's no other issue that has been closer to my work at the Board of Supervisors than looking at revenue and looking at fair taxation. And there's no other department within the city attorney's office that I haven't worked more closely with than the tax team in that office. I have actually, I met David Chiu when we were brought community groups, business groups together, and labor groups working on an alternative to the payroll tax. And that was back in 2006 or 2005. It's something that it's near and dear to my heart is how we can provide or have a business tax that is not going to be onerous on workforce. And payroll tax, that taxes on the number of employees you have and how many employees you have, or and how much they make, is something that could be is a disincentive to hiring people in San Francisco. So I'm looking at the idea of a gross receipts tax in the future. But something else I'm interested in is we have at the state level enabling legislation that could allow San Francisco municipalities around the state to have an income tax. And I'm looking at how we can apply an income tax to the upper income brackets in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Leland?
Thank you very much. I think all of us are speaking in pretty much the same language, and that is that, there is something onerous about a payroll tax, that it does in fact create disincentive for growing jobs. I think the issue is really going to be what take its place, or maybe even a hybrid of some sort. There's been some discussion of gross receipt. I think John is absolutely correct. There's enabling legislation that's working its way through the Senate right now, or the state legislature, to go ahead and give local authorities greater ability to tax itself. Recently, we passed a measure signed by the governor that allows the state now to also start taxing internet activities, because you don't want to create a disincentive for the bricks and mortar, many of your businesses. So I think that there's a lot of moving parts out there, and what's really important is have a larger discussion with you and everybody else participating as to what would be a fair tax that would generate the revenues, allow us to pay for the services that we all want and need.
Thanks, Leland. All right, next question. I'm going to start, David. We'll start with you. Question number 2.